Beyond the Fence Line, a podcast brought to you by the Texas Agricultural Land Trust. Created by landowners for landowners, we're proud to play a role in conserving the Texas legacy of wide open spaces.
Hi, I'm Hannah Blankenship, TALT Stewardship Manager. Each conservation easement at TALT is tailored to meet each individual landowner's unique wishes. This may be to utilize the property for farming or livestock production, or to delineate a specific area for future building. I work to ensure these requests are upheld through annual monitoring. It is important to have support from individuals like you to continue our work here at TALT. If you haven't already, please donate to us today at www.txaglandtrust.org/support.
Well, welcome to our next episode of Beyond the Fence Line. I'm excited about this episode. This episode's really about a week of all things grazing. It's a recap of the National Grazing Lands Conference, and I was fortunate enough to have a couple other TALT members join me in Myrtle Beach. Of Jaclyn Roberts, our Director of Communication and Strategic Partnerships, as well as Brad Pfeil, our Gulf Coast Regional Steward. So Brad, Jaclyn, I'm glad you guys joined us.
Yeah, good job.
How you doing, Chad? It's great to be on here with y'all, and I'm excited to talk about what we've been doing the last month or so.
Great, thanks guys for joining us, and I think the audience is going to enjoy this conversation of just even last week highlights, but also kind of a year-end review of kind of everything we've done this past year. It's been a great year for TALT, and really excited about 2022 as well. So, maybe I'll kind of just start it off and maybe talk about the National Grazing Land Coalition and the importance of that coalition and for TALT and what it means to our landowners across the nation. Historically, when we think about the National Grazing Land Coalition, it's a grassroots organization made up of ranchers from across the nation. It started actually in 1991 when a group of ranchers kind of started looking at what was going on in the country and said, hey, we need to get organized. And they met in Bozeman, Montana. And a lot of this came about really from the 1985 Farm Bill. When we kind of think back and we think of that Farm Bill, that Farm Bill was really focused around cropland and farming and highly erodible land and things of that nature. So what our ranchers across the nation were seeing was that their technical staff, or those technical assistants, folks that were helping them make better decisions and on their operation, mainly with the partnership of the Soil Conservation Service, which is now the Natural Resource Conservation Service. Those guys were being detailed and moved to other areas. And so they started looking around, and their help that was there wasn't there anymore. And so they met in Bozeman to really come together about how do we work together? How do we get more technical assistance on the ground to help, empower producers to be better operators, really focused around the grazing management. When we think about today, when we think about, the National Grazing Land Coalition, it's amazing. We're 30 years old, that organization, and a lot has happened over the years with that organization. I've been very fortunate to be the chairman of that group for the last 9 years, and it's definitely family to me. And Brad, I mean, your mom, Pat's been part of that board even way before my time, and just a lot of great folks.
Yes, sir. She's been heavily involved almost since the inception of GLC, and she dedicated a lot of time and effort to it, but received equal amounts or more value out of being involved with it. And I think that's the case with anybody that gets involved with GLC. The amount of value that's received out of it's just incredible.
Well, and I love too that it's, National Grazing Land Coalition is so producer focused. And so there's so many, you have a lot of leaders, but you're bringing together people from across the entire nation too. So it's not so regional. I mean, it's an opportunity to have conversations that you don't normally have, day to day, year to year, when you're talking with your peers. So it's a great opportunity to bring those folks together too.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Jaclyn. And I think another side of right is it's kind of an umbrella component, right? So we have the National Grazing Land Coalition, and then we have state coalitions, and Texas Grazing Land Coalition is very strong, and that starts getting more to the local areas. And Texas is very unique when you look at across the nation, and the structure of their grazing land coalition is that there's 10 plus local coalitions. So it even gets closer, further down to that local need. And we especially think about the diversity of Texas, from East Texas all the way to the West. I mean, we just have a lot of different ecosystems. Principles are all the same that the ranchers are needing, and the need of technical assistance and good science-based information is still there. But the way we operate, just because of those ecosystems, are a little bit different. And so I think that's important, is really about the network, as Brad mentioned, and being able to, to visit with neighbors and visit with folks and learn together.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think there was a lot of that going on this week too. I know some of the big takeaways, for me, it's just looking on the horizon at some of the questions people have that they're looking for answers for, and how we've evolved so much in our grazing practices and our research. And from a communications perspective, a big piece to me was how was paying attention to how some of these messages are getting out, and how we're becoming more creative and sharing these stories and information with others down the line.
That's
Definitely. The networking side of it, going back to what you're talking about there, across the nation, I work with the local GLC, the Gulf Coast GLC group there, kind of based around the Victoria area, with several producers up and down the Gulf region. And that network has been, just a great group of guys, and a great peer group that, have been very beneficial to that local producer community there. They work closely with Soil and Water Conservation District, within RCS, on, putting together workshops and even just, one-on-one interactions, and sharing what they've been doing, sharing their successes in the area, and even showing, some failures and learning experiences that they've been through. This GLC group is usually on the front end of science and innovation that's coming down in agriculture, and they're trying a lot of stuff, and they're seeing the good and the bad that comes along with it, and how to modify it to make it work for your environment. And these guys are really open to sharing, their experiences and how they've went about it, what they've learned from it. So it's been, the learning potential from the individual all the way up to the national meetings, and seeing what's happening in other states and their challenges, and how they're, adapting and growing their operations around those challenges is super interesting to me.
Yeah, I think those are good points, Brad. And I think that's some of the benefits from TALT, being involved and being part of this too, right? In that conversation of understanding the stories. But I think more importantly, as you hit, to me, is that people are willing to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And and that's important, because I think a lot of times we only want to hear or discuss the good, and the highlights from that side, but we don't really want to share the bad things or the bad experiences and that aspect. And we learn more, from those failures and different things that maybe didn't work in those conversations. And that's what I really like about these conferences, is everybody's willing to share all of those things and help one another, and that's the one thing that, I really focused, as chairman, is that these conferences, we shoot for 85% of the speakers to be producers speaking, right? And I think that's really, really important. It makes this conference very unique compared to others.
No doubt about it. Having attended ag-related symposiums and conferences on the local, state, and national level, the GLC Grazing Conference to me is just, there's so much value there, and there's so much learning to be had. Just like you were saying, there's numerous producers, presenting what they've been doing, what they've been working on, how it's worked, and it's covering every spectrum of, grazing operations, specifically from, new grazing practices or, mineral and soil and soil health, and then all the way to the mental health components involved in, the ag community and ag production agriculture in general, and the stresses of life that come along with this field.
Yeah, it's definitely impacts, right? There's a lot of pressures, a lot of responsibility, a lot of things out of our hands, right? When we think about the markets and things of that nature, you do all this work and, it's kind of rolling the dice and a lot of pressures. And I think that was one, highlight I got, and, was that we had a big mental health discussion, and, three producers kind of sharing their stories and being able to, provide resources and know that people are there and how to cope with the stresses of being a landowner. Jaclyn, what were some of the highlights that you kind of gained or anything?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think I touched on it earlier, but just the ways that we are looking at new ways to share these messages with folks. And so I think there's a lot of great minds in the room, but as for producers, sometimes it's not always feasible to take a day, a week out of the year to go to a conference like this. And so it was really neat for me to see a lot of the ways that we're continuing to share these messages that we're learning this week. And so I know with, in all of the sessions I attended, there was actually video producers that were in the rooms recording the sessions. And so the opportunity for these to be accessible online in the coming year or so, for folks to gain some of these insights, whether that's, on all the topics that Brad was talking about. I know that there's going to be opportunities for that. So that was one of my big takeaways, was just from that communication and outreach perspective, was how it's not just about the conversation happening that day, but keeping that conversation going on for years to come.
Yeah, that's great. Brad, any other kind of key things on your end?
Definitely. So the first couple of days were just, groups of talks after groups of talks. And it was so hard you would look at a schedule and you wanted to be in 3 different rooms at once listening to these conversations. But the last day was kind of broke down into very focused, 3 or 4 or 5 very focused, in-depth discussions on one particular topic. And I got to sit in on the regenerative grazing discussion with Understanding Agriculture's Alan Williams. And I've been fascinated with regenerative ag in general and soil health. And, ever since I was first exposed to it, maybe 10 years ago with, probably it was Jeff Goodwin at the time doing a rancher gathering, talking about soil health, and, seeing, coming from my background in land management, and I ran into a lot of challenges where I didn't understand why I was stuck in my progression of, trying to produce forage, trying to fill in bare ground, yields on cropland that, there was no reason why they were as low as they were, and I couldn't get them up with synthetics. I couldn't understand why I was stuck in a rut in some places. And the more I dive into the regenerative and the soil biology and things like that, there's just light bulbs clicking left and right of, answers to my questions that I was having at the time and just didn't know where to go. And that value there is coming from being involved with GLC directly, you know, being involved with the regenerative ag side, being involved with Noble Foundation and you know, the interaction between all of these groups. So yeah, super interesting conversation there for me personally.
Yeah. You know, I think one thing that kind of builds upon what you're saying, Brad, is I think was something that I'm looking forward to the next 5-6 years, and what comes out is the big announcement that was made at the conference around the largest, you know, when we think about it from a grazing lands perspective, the largest funded research project that's ever happened. And it's a $19 million project, really looking at research aimed to understanding how farmers and ranchers grazing management decisions impact what you said, right? The soil health on their grazing lands. And then in turn, how does that soil health can, you know, positively impact the producer's land and their well-being? And so I'm really excited. This is funded by the Foundation for Food Ag Research, which we've heard from Dr. Lakeisha Odom in past podcast, and the work that FAR does is, you know, they're the USDA foundation, and the importance of them and this private-public collaborations. Noble Research Institute's the other big funder in this. So what I'm excited about this is it's around 3 regions. So we have Dr. Jason Roundtree at Michigan State. There's going to be around 20 producers up in that region. Noble Research Institute's going to have another hub in a region around Oklahoma, Texas, that they're going to have. Dr. Skasta with University of Wyoming. There's going to be another, you know, group of 20 producers, Wyoming, Colorado area. And that's exciting to me to kind of start trying to figure out this metric management and monitoring of these outcomes. And more importantly, how, you know, how the farmers and ranchers can develop tools for them to hopefully, you know, simplify and accurately measure the outcomes of their grazing management from, you know, the soil health as well as the environment, and how it impacts them through intentional management. So I think that's going to be really exciting to see what comes out of that.
Well, and that's something valuable too in a lot of the conversations we've been having internally at TALT regarding ecosystem services, Chad, and how, you know, there's been challenges in measurements. And you know, that's something we're working on, and you know, we want to help tackle as well. And so it's exciting to see that there's a lot of research going on that'll help contribute to that body of knowledge.
Yeah, most definitely. Right. When we think of the marketplace, right, our biggest area and the biggest cost, right, is those verification and measurement. So I think this is important in a lot of ways. And to your great point.
And the timeline on that this is a fairly long research project as well, which I think is unique. And it is it 5 or 6 years?
Yeah, I think they're pushing around, yeah, at that time period. Yes. So I think it's very exciting. And I think what's great is that, I mean, they brought in a lot of partners, you know, from Michigan State, Colorado State, University of Wyoming, Oregon State. The National Grazing Land Coalition will be a partner of this, as well as USDA, ARS, and Savory Institute, and many others. So, you know, it's not, I think that's a unique aspect of how this is set up, is it's not, you know, it's open and broad, right? And trying to bring input. And to me, it's usable science, because they have ranchers that are going to be part of it from the beginning and be part of the whole research project, which I think is important. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of our research is done sort of in a lot of smart people that they're done. And then, you know, how that process is, it's not really brought out or taken to the end user, or, you know, land managers till 5 or 6 years down the road, which is too late in that process. So there's going to be a lot of good come out of this.
I always think it's fun too to hear about what some of the attendees were saying and things, and you know, like what they're thinking. And you heard a lot of support on the ground in this regenerative space and in this research space. And so that was also something that was encouraging to me from the week, just as I reflect.
Brad, any conversations you had with other attendees and feedback?
Definitely. You know, there was several of us from Texas. There was a large group from Texas in that room. And we tend to kind of cluster up and discuss, you know, because a lot of people, you know, but yeah, the conversations that were, you know, after every group, and that's where that networking of, you know, producers in a room, like it's hard to ever replace that in a you know, in a virtual environment. And I'm excited to see those meetings back in person, and the attendance really growing back. And my first time, you know, with GLC back in let's see, where was it? Anyway, 3 years ago. So it's held every 3 years, and 3 years ago was my first time to actually get to those meetings. And I'm glad we got it back in person, and we're able to get into those, you know, get into those hallways and talk and network, and after the meetings, sit down with people, and not just, you know, from our state group, but across the nation. And it was interesting to see how many new faces, new areas were kind of represented in that room, and to sit down with, you know, a guy from Idaho that was doing, you know, direct to market beef production, and a guy from South Carolina that's working on the same thing, and they're building their networks and their groups there, and learning about, you know, learning about different operations from around the country, and seeing the excitement from these producers, no matter what portion of the field they're in, whether it be, you know, your South Texas ranch or your South Carolina, you know, grazing operation, timber operation, farming operation, combined situation, or your maybe Midwestern producer that has, you know, a private property, you know, centralized operation, but utilizes large, you know, state and governmental grazing contracts to expand their operations. They're all, you know, all sitting down and sharing what they're doing, and also, you know, talking about what's coming down the line, and with these ecosystem services, and how it can affect their individual operations, and the potentials for, you know, utilization of these different service markets, you know, across the nation. Is just great to see the excitement there, and you know, the innovation that comes from all those producers sitting down together, and you sit down with a guy from South Carolina, and he'll bring out some points you never thought about from, you know, from a South Texas perspective, but man, it kind of opens your eyes to the potential out there.
Yeah, I think that's what's exciting about it, is you kind of see light bulbs go off. And I had a lot of really good conversation after some of the, you know, there was a number of sessions around succession planning and things of that nature, and, you know, conservation easements being brought up as a tool, right, from that side, and conservation and many things. So I had a lot of, you know, conversations within some of those sessions, as well as, you know, in the halls, of people asking, wanting to know more information, and, you know, being able to kind of, you know, help them, you know, connect them to their local experts and conservation easements and that side. So a lot of great things that came out of the conference for sure, and a lot of benefit from TALT and us sharing our story and gaining more stories, and how do we, you know, impact that. And as you said, Brad, it was great to see a lot of, you know, friends in Texas. I mean, there was a lot of folks from Texas there, which was great from that side. But I think one thing yeah, go ahead, Jaclyn.
I was going to say, I think we were Texas was recognized as having brought some of the most producers to the event at one of the banquets. And so I thought that was exciting to be just in a presence of a lot of forward thinking and innovative producers that were there. So it was really neat.
And I think what's great is it was a lot of the Texas attendees. That was their first conference to go to, which was great too. And bringing new perspectives and them kind of gaining information. You know, I think one of the things that was great, or is great, is that the National Grazing Land Coalition actually recorded each one of those talks. And Brad, you mentioned, you know, the biggest complaint of the conference is there's too many good talks at the same time, right? There's 6 concurrent sessions going on. And I think one that helps take a little bit of pressure of not having to run from, room to room, but also it gives opportunity to the folks that weren't able to travel to Myrtle Beach, to have opportunity to listen to those talks, and which I think is good. I think another highlight to me, it always is, Brad, a mutual friend of ours, and Rick Machem at King Ranch Institute. I know in the past conference, and I think he'll do it again on this conference, he takes a lot of those recordings of those, ranchers telling their story and the good and the bad, and he shares that within the curriculum of the King Ranch Institute program, which I think is another great way to share the stories and bring that information across to others.
Well, and I thought we had one of our own too share their story. Anson Howard was presented at a session, and I got to listen in and talking about ecosystem services and his ranch and some of the grazing practices that he's doing on his land to help protect carbon and store carbon, and how he's marketing different things. And so that was one piece that stood out to me too from those producer stories.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great, again, and I just encourage people to go to the National Grazeland Coalition and look for those recordings here in the next month or so, once they get kind of published and pushed out and ready, and those opportunities, because I think there's a lot of good information for everyone. Maybe there's a lot of things that we gained last week at the conference that we'll move forward and help share that information back here in Texas. But I think another thing that I love about this time of year is really sitting back and reflecting of the past year, and then also forward thinking of the next year. And so I want to spend a little bit of time on this podcast of just having conversation around TALT and all the accomplishments this year and the challenges and what we need to do coming next year. So any thoughts, Jaclyn, on your end of kind of some of those highlights of this past year?
I think the one that comes to mind, especially coming off this the same tone of this education and learning, was we're TALT kind of exploring new ventures. And so in that ecosystem services space, we talked a lot about that being a theme of regenerative grazing and all of these great practices. And something it's in the blood of TALT is that we're here to keep working lands working, and to do that, these lands have to be profitable. And that was a big theme, I think, for us this year. We need more tools, and that was something that really stood out to me, is how we're kind of venturing into that space and looking for trying to teach ourselves new ways of helping these producers. And so our work in the ecosystem services space this year is one of my, I think one of the big themes that stands out to me for TALT and where we're going, and also, where we've been this year.
No, I think you're spot on, right? I mean, economics is a key. And, just because we have easements on properties doesn't mean that everything's, in place, right? There's still a business at the end of the day. And we have to find those other mechanisms and other tools that layer in and intertwine and stack, right? I mean, we've talked a lot about that this year, of how do we stack the benefits of conservation easements, ecosystem service markets, and multiple of those market opportunities of carbon, water, biodiversity, and start to highlight the value of the land stewardship and all the work that's being done.
Well, and Brad gets to hear that firsthand too, from all the producers that he works with. And, I think about, another theme, that I'm proud of that TALT's done is connecting with producers and connecting with these landowners. So it's a lot of that's outreach, and a big piece of that has been our regional steward program. Brad, as a regional steward for the Gulf Coast region, has really had a lot of important one-on-one conversations with folks to listen. I mean, more than anything, talk to them, but also listen.
Yeah, it's been a huge learning curve for me, coming out of the management, land management side of things, I was the one looking for, help and assistance and guidance on things, and seeking out, utilizing NRCS, utilizing FSA, utilizing any resource I could to advance an operation and try to make it more profitable, and try to make it, more sustainable. But a huge goal of that was keeping the land together, keeping the legacy there, and getting that land to the next generation, making it as efficient as possible to transition to the next generation, and that legacy there for family owned properties. And, now kind of being on the other side of that equation and working with TALT, and, I get to go sit down with small groups and large groups, and a lot of one-on-one conversations, and get to hear the other side. Yes, I may go to a meeting and, they think they've had me there to, discuss TALT or discuss conservation easements and gain familiarity to that. But that's just, a 5 or 6 minute, get up in front of somebody and give a typical overview. But it's the conversations after that where I get to, hear what people are needing or what they're looking for, or questions they're trying to get answered. And a lot of that lately has been around ecosystem services and carbon markets and things like that. And it just, amplifies the need of what I believe we're trying to do in TALT with the ecosystem service markets, is that trusted source of knowledge, someplace for producers to go and gain a better understanding and learn about these new tools. That's a lot of what I'm hearing from the field right now. And producers, they've all heard about it. They all see the potential value in it. But one, they're either just super hesitant because they don't know who they can trust or believe to understand these new tools out there.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to build, like you mentioned, that trusted hub. And, I think we take it just like we do any business, of sitting down one-on-one and understanding the goals and objectives of the family operation, and then, be able to, give the pros and cons of each marketplace and give them information and what key questions they need to ask, and, to help them make the best decision. But, I think another thing that I'm super excited about this past year, right, our bread and butter and what TALT's about is the conservation easement and that tool. And, we're working here to the last, second. We got 5 more closings that we have to get done by the end of the year. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to have another, just really great year for us. And I think that's exciting. Brad is with you and Ken and Clay and, our other guys on staff, is that the engagement side and of folks, really looking more at that easement and looking at that tool to, really help keep that legacy and heritage down to the next generation. I mean, we have, extremely, high amount of pipeline, and we got the right people to be able to help families. And at the end of the year, here at the end of the month, we're going to be close to me, which is so exciting, is we can say that we've helped 40 families, right, keep that legacy and heritage down to the next generation. And to me, that is so exciting. And to me, probably our biggest accomplishment to date. When we think about going into 2022, we're starting our 15th year, and there's a lot to be grateful and a lot to be blessed in. But we look at the impacts that are coming upon, and the pressures of landowners, of land fragmentation and population increase. We still have a lot of work ahead of us.
Well, and just, I agree, Chad, and I would just piggyback off what you said and really emphasize that we're coming on 15 years, and 40 families in 15 years that's really, we are the largest land trust in Texas, and we've done that in such a short time. And I think it's just a big accomplishment and something to be celebrated. And I'm looking forward to, this coming year being able to help really just celebrate the people who helped get us here. I think one highlight that comes to mind as well is our 15th anniversary gala that we'll be holding later this spring.
Yeah, it's going to be a great time and a great opportunity for us all to get together and as you mentioned, highlight all the hard work of setting that foundation. And it was not an easy task, and appreciate everyone that put all that hard work and saw the need for TALT.
Well, and the families that trusted us too. I mean, all those folks, they, that was a leap of faith, and I hold that dear. I take that responsibility very seriously, and it's something. It's really rewarding to be able to give back to not only the individuals that helped, pave this way for us, but also those families that believe in land stewardship and conservation and protecting their little piece of Texas.
For sure. And I think that what you just said, Jaclyn, the trust factor there, that speaks volumes to, the integrity of TALT and how it was set up, and those who were involved in setting it up, and how the board is put together, and developing that trust with producers for something that's as intimate as a conservation easement is just that's a huge responsibility for TALT, and even trickling down to my very small part of it. I feel honored to be a part of TALT and be involved in those those stories and those operations, and I'm looking forward to meeting more of them. I've had a few opportunities to meet some of our partners there, but I'm looking forward to meeting a lot more of them at the gala coming up and hearing more of those stories.
Well, any last thoughts or comments from either one of you?
I'm just glad we were able to all get together and share kind of some of our takeaways from this week, and looking forward to a great year. And I know there's a lot of exciting things that are coming down the pipeline. So I just encourage listeners to stay tuned and follow along with us, and definitely excited for what's to come.
Yeah, I'll definitely echo that sentiment. I'm very, very excited to see what 2022 is bringing. There's so many moving parts here that are coming together, and just new avenues and new resources, and just super excited to learn more about them and get involved and bring them back to the local level, and bring them in front of the producers, and show them more options and more tools that could help progress an operation.
Well, thanks guys, for helping us kick off this week's podcast, and also helping host the wonderful event, the conservation or the Grazing Land Coalition's conference in Myrtle Beach last week, and appreciate all y'all's help and engagement through that. And and for our listeners, if you enjoyed this podcast, really be sure to rate and review us, and look forward to visiting with you next week or next month with some more great content. So everyone have a blessed Christmas and New Year.
Thanks, Chad.
Thank you, Chad.
Beyond the Fence Line is brought to you by the Texas Agricultural Land Trust, dedicated to conserving the Texas heritage of agricultural lands, wildlife habitats, and natural resources. Find out more at txaglandtrust.org.